Welcome back to Life Between Coasts. I'm your host, Leah. We're glad you're here. After talking with our friend Shep, I thought it was important that we also bring in somebody that talks about things on a different spiritual side, a little bit more mystical. So our next guest, Carley, is actually going to be talking about something that maybe we're not used to. We're going to be talking to her, and Carley, she's a Hoodoo practitioner, and she'll explain more about that and exactly what that means and how the universe has actually affected her life in a very much spiritual way. My favorite part of our interview together is how much that I was able to connect with her. We have a little synchronicity that we share at the end, and I hope that you get a good laugh out of that. So again, if you are interested in reaching out to Carley after this episode, you can go to her website, which is queenbeeconjure.com. And that's conjure, CONJURE.com. For some reason, I kept having an issue in the episode of how to spell that. But you can also reach out back to our website, lifebetweencoasts.com. Go to the contact section and either choose to ask to be on the show or ask a question for Carley. And we can make sure that she gets on to be able to answer those questions for you. I hope you enjoy the show and have a wonderful day. Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Life Between Coasts. I'm Leah, your host. Today we have our guest, Carley, and she's so very welcome to be here.
Hi.
Hi, Carley. How are you?
I am well, thank you. How are you?
Fabulous. I'm so happy that you're here with us. So to begin, would you just tell me a little bit about you?
Wow. It's funny how when somebody asks you to tell me about yourself, it's a little difficult sometimes, but I am married. Mm-hmm. I have many children. Most of them are adults and out of the house. I have been a Hoodoo practitioner for over 30 years. I was a hand-taught and mentored in New Orleans. My mentor was a Creole woman, and she mentored me until the day she died. She was my spiritual mother. And after being raised in a very strict church growing up, it was completely night and day for me. But I've always been gifted, and it was never accepted until I was an adult and out of my parents' home. I've had one of those lives that people go, oh, that's unreal. So I've had a lot of experiences that were unreal.
Like what?
So I was married and in an abusive domestic violence situation for about 13 and a half years. And they are absolutely correct on the statistics. It takes 9 times for a woman to leave. And on the 9th time, I was leaving because my son was in a lot of trouble. My oldest son, he was a teenager and was in a lot of trouble with the law and the legal system. And my late husband was not supportive of that. Instead, he was throwing temper tantrums, and he was a narcissist, and he was, like I said, he was highly abusive, not only to myself, but to my kids. Mm-hmm. And after another abusive situation, I went and filed for divorce and a restraining order. He kept begging me to stop the divorce and to just drop the restraining order and to make everything better, and brought home flowers, and I'm so sorry. And I had a girlfriend from high school that had moved in to my basement to help support me both emotionally and financially. And he came home, and after I said no, he left again for a brief time, and then I was standing there folding clothes, and all I was thinking about was I had gone to see a psychic in Brighton, Michigan. And I'd gone to see her, and I was a little skeptic because being a gifted person and seeing somebody else, it's a little weird. And so I went and saw her, and she was spot on. And she told me, I don't care what you do at home, keep your shoes on. I don't care. The moment you get up, I want you to get dressed, and I want you to keep your shoes on. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was weird. I really did. I thought, oh, okay. But I talked to my sister about it, my blood sister, and she was like, well, just do it. It's like, okay. So I kept my shoes on. I'm folding clothes, and my master bedroom had windows over the driveway in Fenton, and folding clothes, and I look out, and I see him pull up in his work truck, and he gets out, and he had a gun in his hand. And if I hadn't had my shoes on, I wouldn't have made it out of that house. So I,
Goosebumps.
as he was coming in the garage basement door, because it was a tri-level, and so the garage was on the lower level, and as he was coming in the house, my girlfriend from high school that had moved in and I went out the front door. Went out the front door, got in the car, and took off. Then I went to the schools and picked my children up from school. I went back to La Casa and Howell, had to file another amendment, and then we were put in a hotel in another city to avoid him. He kept calling me and wanting to know where I was. Where are you? What are you doing? Why aren't you home? And it got to the point where I just stopped answering the phone, turned my phone off. And the next day, I went back to the courthouse to get the amended restraining order to change the locks because it's community property. I went there and went back to the house, and as we were changing the locks, a detective came to the door and asked for me by name, and then told me that they found him, that he had committed suicide and shot himself in the head behind a bar off of M59.
Oh, wow.
And then the detective told my brother that they truly believed, Oakland County truly believed, that he was going to kill each and every one of us as we came home. He was going to come home and kill me, possibly my friend, and that he would have taken the children too, because anyone who is just going to kill themselves doesn't buy 2 full clips.
Wow.
And so it was a very tragic situation. It caused a lot of trauma, but no more so than the life that we lived beforehand. And people think that I'm crass when I say that, or I'm being insensitive. But I believed him when he told me he'd kill me.
Mm-hmm.
I truly did.
Mm-hmm.
And now I know he would have.
If I may interject, I was introduced to a book, and I did do a short film on this specific book, but it turned a little dark. How I was reciting or how I was describing this book, but it's very important because it ties into you. It's called The Gift of Fear, and it was written by Gavin DeBecker. And the fear in the pit of your stomach, that's
absolutely
what you knew. And that's what people forget, that's the fear that we need to recognize. And the medium or whomever you went to see, the clairvoyant, whatever. I mean, there's so many different realms that we can be pulling from. But it's just that she put you on that path to recognize, because you're like, oh, I've dealt with him before, but he specifically, DeBecker, I should say, in this book, specifically says that a restraining order doesn't necessarily, it's going to keep them away. It could aggravate them. And then that's what sets the situation off. Because it's not always, it's always the police's way of fixing it, because that's how they know how to fix it. But it's not the same as when it's actually there, because if the person is in that like mental decline and wants you dead, they're going to make plans to do that.
Absolutely. And I believe that for my late husband, it was a lack of control. He had lost control.
Yeah. You stood up and said, I'm out.
Exactly.
Yeah, it is. It's control and power, those are very interesting things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, too, that the gift of fear is something that we have been so unaccustomed to listening to anymore. We don't follow our guts anymore. We think, oh, no, that's not logical. When something intuitively or even instinctually is telling us this is not okay, this is something we need to look at. And it's like the whole, do you choose the man or the bear scenario? A lot of women chose the bear because they know what to expect. They know the predictability of what a bear is going to do,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't have any predictability with a man.
No, it's hard. It's a very hard situation. Now, how many kids do you have?
7 if you include my bonus daughter.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
7, lucky 7.
Yeah.
That's always good. And you said they're all adults now?
All but 2. My bonus daughter and my youngest daughter are both going to be 12.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do any of your children, excluding the bonus daughter just because she's not biological to you, do they carry the gifts that you...
Yes. Oh, yes.
So you see...
Yes.
Have you encouraged them to look into them?
Absolutely. I also want them to be open to all forms of spirituality. So raising my kids, I raised them in a Hoodoo household. Mm-hmm. And so they know, like, my mom will say superstitions, but they know the routines and the things that we do that are different from other households. Mm-hmm. I also don't believe in secrets, because after living in a domestic violence situation, there was no more secrets. This is life, and this is how we learn the natural consequences of our choices. And so I was really big on making sure that they knew and had the self-reassurance and confidence to make the decisions the right way and be able to face the consequences when they did not.
And I completely approve of that statement. No, specifically because the choices, everything, good or bad, have consequences. And that's something I repeat to myself. You know, whatever choice, you know, do you eat the bag of chips or do you eat the broccoli and cauliflower? You know, it's one's healthier for you and it's a superfood, one's greasy, and you know, it's funny because I have, you know, you have those little like things that get stuck in your head from people. And I remember growing up, and one of the women that was very, very important to me in my life, she was like a second mother to me. One of her words were, you know, a moment on your lips, forever on your hips. Mm-hmm. But that's because it's a woman. It's our brain. It's how it works.
I often say my future self will thank me. If I don't have to wake up to dishes in the sink, then I will be happier tomorrow morning than what I would be if I had to get up and wash my cup before I have coffee.
Absolutely.
So, you know, just things like that. If I get gas now and I don't have to do it in the morning, my future self will thank me.
It'll save you that extra 10 minutes. You know, now if you're running late, you're not going to be like super late because of that. You know, so something like that. So going back, tell me more about the Hoodoo. Now, tell me from as if I know nothing, because I just want to make sure everybody understands what that practice is. And
Hoodoo is actually a Christian practice. Mm-hmm. A lot of people don't understand that we use a lot of Psalms, Proverbs, and the books of Moses, prayers of Moses. A lot of people think that Hoodoo and Voodoo are the same. And Voodoo is a religion and Hoodoo is a practice. So it's very different. Hoodoo was originated from the African-American slaves that were brought over, and also the Celtic slaves that were brought over.
Really?
So you had a lot of Irish Celtic people that were on the slave ships. And so they were Catholic. And then you had the slaves that were brought over from Africa or even Haiti and different places. And they had their own religion. And so it's kind of a mashup between the two, because they wanted to hide, the slaves wanted to hide their religion behind whatever was being pressed upon them from the Catholic religion or from whatever religion their slave owners might have been at the time. Mm-hmm. And so the Hoodoo practice is about not only Jesus and, you know, the deities that and the saints and all of that, but also about the ancestors that taught them how to survive being oppressed and taught them how to have the cultural without having to give it up. Mm-hmm. So they wanted to not necessarily hide it, because hiding it makes it seem like it's covert, but it was more of trying to have their individual culture and their religious practices and rituals and belief system without having it be oppressed further by slave owners and different cultures saying, no, you can't have that. Mm-hmm. So Hoodoo is about root work. It is about energy and bending energies and about the spirituality that comes with that. And so trying to put it in a little synopsis is very difficult for me. I was hand taught. I had to do lineage work. I have done biofeedback. I have done past life regression and just a lot of it. And like I told you earlier, I saw something on TikTok about Hoodoo's closed. Hoodoo's, only for the, African American people. Well, it's not. It's really not. I can trace my lineage back. People say, oh, well, you must have been a slave owner. No, my family was slaves too. And they can say what they want, but I was taught by a Creole woman who accepted me, and it wouldn't be any different than me being adopted into a family. It really isn't. Mm-hmm. And so for me, it's an everyday practice. So I try to tell people that I have taught and other people that I have mentored, put intention into everything that you do. If you put a manifestation of intention on everything that you do, you bless your water before you drink it, just like you do for a Christian prayer before you eat or drink anything. Mm-hmm. I bless my water before I put it in my coffee pot. I'm going to have a good day. These are the blessings and abundance that I'm going to face today, and these are the decisions that I want help with making. So it's a request for guidance every day, whether I'm getting in my car or whether I'm going to work on something or whatever it may be. And people say, oh, you take the time out for that. No, after it gets ingrained into your everyday routine, it doesn't take me any time at all. Mm-hmm. It's an ongoing conversation, just like a Christian having an ongoing relationship and conversation with Jesus Christ or Mary or whatever it is. For me, it's an ongoing conversation. It's just a different person for me.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. Now, and there's scientific proof about the water and negative and positive vibes that come from it. They showed that by putting negative feelings and thoughts on the exterior of a bottle and taking perfectly sterile water and then doing positive thoughts on a separate bottle, that they found that the negative thoughts caused cloudiness to the water. It caused, when they made snowflakes out of the same water, they were irregular shaped. They were not complete, but with the positive, they made snowflakes. They were perfect. They were all different. They were detailed. I mean, it's scientifically proven.
And that's where the metaphysics come in.
Yes.
And so I think that a lot of people lose the practical magic, and not to quote the movie, but like the practical magic of nature.
Yes.
And so whether you believe that God created it or the divine or whatever you want to call it, then, it's like we can all have the same God under different names. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't necessarily, for me, it doesn't necessarily matter who you are praying to, as long as you are praying to, you know what I mean, include and be inclusive and have intention in a positive manner.
Yes.
So...
because there are people that hide behind the cloak of religion, and
right.
They're not necessarily good people. Oh, I'm a good Christian. I go to church every Sunday. I do potluck dinner. I do this or that, but they're not necessarily good people to the core. I see even people that are people of the cloth. I'll say people because, man, women, whatever. But that still you see some of the postings that don't feel all inclusive of all of God's children or all of whomever's children that they might be, because they're all the same characters. It doesn't matter, something like this, just like the universe. And I'm not a political person, but something like this needs to go away. It doesn't matter if you have a D or an I or an R. This is God or the universe. These are the things that connect us. We're humans. We bleed the same color blood, period. That's it. We're energy. Our physical is what we can see now, but those things take that away. And that's where we need to take us together talking and spreading this message. That's where the exciting part of this comes from. That's what drives me to do this. And I have no idea what I'm doing. Let's just admit this, okay? First and foremost, let's just admit I have no idea what I'm doing. The first half a dozen episodes were about me. I don't like to necessarily put myself out there. So let's talk about you some more. Okay. Because they've heard enough about me and sadness and coming through all of that darkness. But this is me. This is the light. You talked about your former, now deceased ex-husband. But But, and you said some people think you're crass because you say, well, he's gone. That close that chapter, move on. I have my children to raise. You've went on into other relationships that were successful, obviously.
Yeah.
Kind of,
yeah.
yes.
I was single for a while, and then I got with a man that I had known all throughout my marriage with my late husband.
Mm-hmm.
I had known him for a very long time, and we got married. And then we had moved to Houston, got married, trusted him just completely. He was my happily ever after.
Mm-hmm.
Had my daughter, who's my youngest, and she's going to be 12 this coming month, and bought my dream house. He had a wonderful job, highly successful in his field, worked for the government,
Mm-hmm.
bought a house, and it was extremely haunted, that's a whole nother episode. Extremely haunted plantation home.
Mm-hmm.
And just beautiful. And then around Thanksgiving, I started feeling like something was off. And I could not figure out what was going on. And it was one of those things where you walk around and you're like, something isn't right. It just didn't feel right. Something felt very negative, and I couldn't, and life was beautiful. I couldn't figure it out. My business was thriving. I was featured on the news, giving a reading. Just everything was going really well, but something didn't feel right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did some self-reflection and some spiritual work for myself. And in doing so, I found out that there was a lie, and I couldn't figure out who was lying to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I asked my husband at the time, are you seeing somebody? Because he was away quite a bit. Is there something going on that I need to know about? Oh, no. So I called the woman that saved my life, that told me to keep my shoes on. And her business is Whispering Robin, and I love her. And I called her long distance from Louisiana, and I said, this is what I'm feeling, and this is what is going on. And she said, it's in your house. Mm-hmm. It is in your house, and it's about one of your kids. Okay. So I went and took a spiritual bath and a cleansing, and I did some more work on myself so that I could see. Wake me up. Show me, let me see. So I went to bed that night, and my husband at the time worked from home, and typically he would get up with the kids and get them off to school, and then my youngest would get up a little bit later, and and here was this man who worked for the FBI, who had every psychological examination you can think of. He wrote the software to catch online predators.
Mm-hmm.
And I was pushed out of bed.
Mm.
It was 5:43 in the morning, and I was pushed. I didn't just fall out of bed. I was pushed out of bed. And I heard, go turn on the shower. Clear as day. And I was looking around and it's dark. And so I stumble to the pantry linen closet, and I get a towel, and I stumble over. The only shower in that house that was built in 1856 was through one of my children's rooms, because it was a circle. Every bedroom had a shower or had a bathroom in between them, and the only one that had a working shower and not a clawfoot tub was. So I went through that room, and when I came in there, I turned the light on. I caught him trying to put his hands on one of my children in the dark. Mm-hmm. And he is lucky to be alive, because after the incident with my late husband, I did go and learn how to shoot a gun, and I did own my own gun. Mm-hmm. And so I turned the light on, and I looked at my child, and I said, you have a lot to tell me, and I have questions. Mm-hmm. And he, of course, jumped up and was like, it's not what it looks like. It's not that. It's not this. It's whatever he wanted me to think that it was. And after everything that I had been through, I was like, no. Mm-mm. So I'm in the shower, and people say to me, well, why would you just get in the shower? He ran. Tail tucked between his legs. He ran. I'm in the shower, and I'm trying to think of what to do next. And it's almost like I went on autopilot. And I went into my bedroom, had my robe on, got my gun out, and I laid it on my bathroom counter, and I called my best friend who lives in Houston at the time. And it's a 3-hour drive. I said, how fast can you get here? Now, mind you, I called her from the house phone, which I didn't know how I knew her number, because you don't memorize numbers anymore.
No, you don't.
And so I called her from the house phone, and she's like, what? What is going on? Because I called her. It's still dark outside. She has no idea what time it is. And I said, how fast can you get here? What happened? And I just spilled. I told her everything that I saw. My whole life changed in a matter of 15 seconds. And I said, I need you to get here. And she said, where is he? I said, right now? Yeah, right now. I said, downstairs. Is he breathing? I said, that depends on how fast you can get here.
Yes.
And I'm
You don't touch your child.
I would have been in jail.
I mean,
She got there in an hour and a half.
and a 3-hour, yeah.
I looked at my child, and I'm not going to name which one, but I looked at my child and I said, do you want Aunt Mamie or do you want Aunt Ray? And these are people that are my family because I created them. They are my family because they are friends. They are my spiritual sisters. They are my family.
Right.
And she said, I want Aunt Mamie. And I said, okay, she's on her way. You are going to school. You go straight to the office and you wait for Aunt Mamie to get there. I sent all of my children to school. My oldest was already out of the house and in his own apartment. And we had plans that day, my oldest and I, to go do some running around for him and his employment stuff and whatever. And so I got ready, got my daughter ready, who, she was very young. She was a year old. And got everything ready and got my shoes on. And I was leaving, and he was like, where are you going? And I said, I have stuff to do today. Well, I'll keep her. I said, no, you won't. And he was like, what? I said, no, you won't. I'm done. It's not what you... No. I just kept saying no. And I got in the car, and I drove. And I ended up at a friend's house, and I told her... And she's like, are you kidding me? What you're telling? I said, I'm waiting. I can't go home, but I'm waiting. And so my best friend went and picked my child up from school. And they went to a restaurant. And the way that things happened after that point are amazing. Because if that wasn't divine intervention, I met them at the restaurant. There was a state trooper sitting next to us. And I said, are you busy? Are you finished with your breakfast? And he said, what's going on? And I told him. And he was like, are you kidding me? And I said, no. And I need somebody outside of this jurisdiction because that's where he works. He what? So I tell him. And I tell him the details and all of the things. And they send us to Hope House. And we do interviews at Hope House. And we do all of the things. And Homeland Security stormed that house. And he said, had they been there, and I've talked to him since, he said, had they arrived, 2 minutes later, the gun that I left laying on the counter would have been used. And Homeland Security did storm the house. They arrested him. He did go to prison. We were divorced immediately. And I was given sole custody. The only reason we have had any contact is because he still has rights. Louisiana doesn't terminate rights. He cannot see her. He has to have supervised visitation if he does. Things like that. And it's been a rough road, but I can tell you that my youngest daughter at 3 years old once come to me after watching Peppa Pig, and she said, why don't we have a daddy? Why don't we have a daddy? And I said, I don't know, because we don't need one. Oh. And she took it at face value, because anytime we ever went shopping or to Walmart or whatever it was, and we don't need that, like, she was like, oh, okay. And so when I met my husband now, she was 4. And I told him, I said, when we first, because we talked for a long time before he ever met any of my kids. And I told him, I said, when you first meet her, she doesn't like men unless they're her older brothers. She doesn't like men. And she will not share her blanket or her food. And she will probably stay distanced from you for a while. Now, his daughter is the same age as mine. And so I'm thinking, she's not going to be the same as your daughter with you. And, girl made me a liar.
Oh, goodness. What'd she do?
She did. He come over, we're sitting on the couch. She goes up next to him, sits next to him, cuddles up next to him, shares her popcorn, and hands him her blanket. I'm like, okay, I get it.
She read something different.
Yes. So all of those fears were erased. And my daughter and my bonus daughter, they were best friends very, very fast. Mm-hmm. And they fight like sisters, because they are sisters, but they're still very close.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so 3rd time's the charm?
It's my 4th, but yeah, 4th.
I didn't know there was one in there. I only remember that.
Yeah. I don't mention my first marriage because I forget about it.
That's all right.
It was very short. We didn't really have any big...
There was nothing impactful.
No,
just
I had
like
a
a
huge
relationship
custody battle. He was military, and he got caught fraternizing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but the custody battle with my oldest 2 was with my mother, not my ex-husband.
Okay.
Yeah, because of my spiritual beliefs, and they tried to say, "Oh, you're a witch. You can't have your kids."
That's interesting. Because there are, a lot of people don't necessarily believe in mystics, psychics, mediums, healers even, whether it be Reiki or chakra or there's so many different elements that come from that spiritual side or that metaphysical side, and even birth charts. One of my previous episodes, we were speaking about birth charts, and I used the First Lady as a comparison because we share a birthday. Obviously, she was born in Europe. I was born here in the United States. And so I had my specific information. I just had her country. But it's very interesting how just comparing, even on the same day, even though we have several similarities, there are some major differences, because my moon rising is also Taurus, but hers is Capricorn. So those little shifts make things different. And, things are painted in the stars, in the planets for us. But I think it's hard for people to believe outside of a normal, or I don't even want to call it normal, but, the perfectly boxed religion.
Right.
So going back to your beliefs, how has all of that influenced your life? Do you look for the signs? Do you?
I do now.
When you dive deep and you do the spiritual cleanse and you start reading yourself if you need to, but how do you find the signs as you're looking around?
I think that what I do is anything that shows up for the 3rd time is a sign. If you see something and it's just out of the ordinary, right? You don't think anything of it the first time, or you try to rationalize it, and you think, no, logically that could just be there for whatever reason. But if it happens again, your subconscious takes note. And then they show you the 3rd time. So in the Bible, they also call it fleecing. So Abraham put the fleece out, and he said, if this fleece is dry, God wants me to do this. But if it is wet, I am given the free will to do that. Okay, just loose interpretation.
Yes.
So with signs, it's kind of the same thing. So with metaphysical, it is the same thing. In the metaphysical, I'm saying, if I'm to do this, the pendulum will swing this way. If I'm to do that, it won't swing at all. Right? So it's kind of the same aspect. But energy is energy, and energy bends. And so that's where free will comes in. And people will say, oh, so you don't believe in fate. No. I believe in energy and choices, and the things that we decide every day have a ripple effect on our life. So my choices weren't always good choices, and I had to suffer the consequences of those. And I've had to do a lot of apologizing to my kids for not leaving sooner or for not making a different decision. I know now, but in the moment, in what I was given as far as circumstances or options, it was I had to make the best decision in that moment with what I was given, with the information that I had. Looking back, I would have made a different decision, but I didn't have that information then. So to me, everything is choices, and it's a matter of looking for the signs. I think that if you look for them, you'll find whatever it is that your mind is trying to pick up on.
Right.
If you let it happen, if you sit in the quiet, if you pay attention to the small details, then you will understand more.
I agree, because it's hard to pinpoint when you see the signs, because like you said, it's the theory of, show me a crime, I'll find you a criminal or something like that, or however you reverse organize to find the answer that you're looking for. I look at the signs as more of a confirmation rather than pushing me towards something. So it's always finding something will come out and show up as confirmation. Somebody's supposed to be in my life. There's a reason why that person's here, or there's a reason why I chose to do something this way versus the other way. And you'll get those little kind of nudges along the way to say, yeah, you chose the right path. And there are choices that I've made just the same that aren't. Now, have you, through especially those major events, you said you apologized to your kids for not leaving or sooner, or you're sorry that bad thing happened. Did you carry guilt for a long time?
I still carry some.
Do you? You know how they always talk about from like the karma side of things, just releasing
like
things
because
so just get you how you get your stars aligned and to live the perfect life. So how much do you believe in like the act of forgiveness for yourself and for to forgive others, but then also forgiving yourself? Because you can easily, you don't have to forget, but you can forgive.
Actually, I think that you do have to also forget
slightly
like
the bad
it's
stuff.
Doesn't mean that you have to reunite yourself or put yourself back in that situation, but you have to forgive somebody else, because if not, that bitterness is going to stay in your life.
Right.
And I've learned that with my relationship with my mother, and I have had to tell people, even my own family members, siblings, that fool me once, that's your fault, but if I do it again and I allow you to take advantage of me again, that's me for having a different expectation and having the same outcome.
Right.
Like, I should have known. And so when somebody says to me, well, she says she's not, that's fine. That's fine. Just because she's my mother and just because I forgive her does not mean that I have to do it again.
Right.
So, yeah, I have a lot of that. And then, like with my own kids, we still have our problems. We still have troubles. We still have things that arguing amongst themselves even. And I had to come to the conclusion, and just a point of my healing, to say, yeah, I could have done things differently, but they're adults now. They're adults now. And I love them and I forgive them, but I am not a beating post. I am not somebody that you can walk all over and disrespect and just berate and belittle and treat poorly. I'm not here for you to abuse me and to repeat the cycle.
Right.
I'm here to remind you that cycle has ended.
And you made the choice to end that cycle. For you stood up and said, for me, I need to stop this. And it's like a cat chasing its tail, round and round in the circle. And until that cycle is broken or you step out of it, then you move forward. But it's the, again, it's the same as the forgiveness for others, but just back to yourself, just the same. Because you do feel guilty, like, oh, why did I choose that person? Why did I put my kids through that? Why? You would have never known.
Right.
It doesn't.
In those low moments, though, I try to go to meditation.
Right.
I light a candle, and I remember that even for myself, that part of myself is gone.
It is.
That lifetime, because, to me, looking back, that looks like a different lifetime. It doesn't feel the same.
Right.
And anything that tries to take me back there, I have to not have that in my life.
Right.
Because I can't go back there. And in forgiving myself, I can't go back there. Because if I just try to relive it, or if I'm triggered and taken back to that time and space, I am not doing it myself any justice, or the growth that I've made any justice.
Well, hindsight's 2020, and and that's it. It's really funny because the surgery. Let's use that as an example. So the mind doesn't remember the pain of surgery, just like the mind. So you know that you were in pain. And you had surgery because of that pain, and or childbirth even. Women. I don't know it, but women know the pain of childbirth, but the mind doesn't remember it. Otherwise, you wouldn't have more kids, right?
Right.
But you wouldn't have surgery as well. So it's like the pain that you feel at the moment before it's alleviated. Your mind doesn't remember that. So that's the part, like you're saying, you kind of become numb when you're looking back. It's a separate chapter. That door has closed. You've locked it up tight and shifted and stepped forward. Because so many people hang on to that grudge, like, oh, if I didn't make that decision, but that's my life. I just make bad decisions over and over and over again. No, because everybody deserves happiness. You made a choice. It didn't work out. Some of those things weren't your brain making, those decisions.
Exactly.
They were outer influences that we don't have control over.
Exactly.
So that's just,
yeah.
I mean, I'm just seeing all of these things, and then, finding our synchronicity, before we started. Okay. So just to tell everyone, as we were chatting, I'd purchased some tickets for my birthday for this year, for a concert for Billy Joel and Stevie Nicks. And the concert was supposed to be at the end of March, but unfortunately Mr. Joel apparently had to have surgery, so they postponed the showing. So now it's rescheduled for November. And we were sitting and talking about anthems. So our personal anthems, and I asked Carley what her anthem is, and she told me
Landslide
by Stevie Nicks. And I said, that's so funny. I said, I have tickets to go, and I have some great seats, but they postponed it, and I didn't have anyone to go with. And I said, she's with Billy Joel, and she says, oh my gosh, I love Billy Joel. And so we have this shared appreciation for Billy Joel and Stevie Nicks.
Yep.
And so she is now my invitee to the concert in November. So when we'll go to the concert, we'll have a blast, and then we'll have to do another interview and talk about all the fun that we've had and all of the people that we can talk to and make connections with. So that's one thing that we have coming for the future, but I definitely think that you should come back and talk some more, because I'm very much more interested. I need to educate myself a little bit more on the Hoodoo side, so I can ask a few more questions that I'm certain some inquiring minds would love to know.
Yeah, and I also have a website. I have queenbeeconjure.com, and there's a lot of information that I share on there, both about my personal life, my personal experiences, my spirituality and how I was taught, some traditions that, there's certain things in Hoodoo that we don't share with the general public. And there's reasons for that, but just like any other religion, everything is personal. And so there's some aspects of religious practice that I would share with a mentee or somebody that I'm teaching, or even with a client on a one-on-one basis. but it's not something that we share openly on a forum just because it cannot be described.
And I understand that. I would say it would be more general questions, but just to understand specifics of just how the practice would work, or if somebody wanted to get a reading, they could reach out to you at your website and ask.
And I do several different types of readings. I have the gift of mediumship. I also am a tarot reader and reading tarot cards for, my age is showing, 30 years. So, yeah.
Hey, another tip around the sun.
Right, right.
Okay.
But yeah, and like I said before, I've been featured on the news when I had my business down south. We had a very successful business, brick and mortar business down south in Spring, Texas, and a competitor set us on fire. And so then we had to move, and then we had to move again, and then I moved from Texas to Louisiana, ran the business outside of my home, and like I said, it was a plantation home. I also did weddings. I'm ordained. I have an associate's in diversified religion.
Excellent. Excellent. And so the website is Queen Bee Conjure. So CONJOUR.
Yes.
.com.
Conjure with an E at the end.
Oh,
So
there's an
Queen
E.
Bee Conjure.
Oh, with an E. So
Yep.
I want to make sure we get this right. So Queen Bee Conjure. CONJURE. .com.
Yes.
That's why I didn't win the spelling bee in 5th grade. I made it to regionals as the runner-up, I think. But I love words and spelling. So
And then, there's a blog on there. There's a section for reviews on there.
Yes.
And to be honest, I just opened the website. It's still fairly new. And I'm working on all of the rest of the paperwork that goes along with owning a business.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Oh, perfect. Well, I am so glad that you came to visit us today. I am. This is great. This is everything that I've hoped it to be.
Thank you.
Because like I said, it is really difficult in talking about yourself. So my last few episodes, when you're sitting and talking about yourself and you're not used to putting that much out there, I make the joke that I regurgitate the same 5 stories to my clients when they come to my desk, because I wasn't one that was going to throw everything out, because some of it's pretty dark. It's like, I don't want you to think I'm some crazy person or whatever. But it's not. But I think it's. I think this is fabulous. I love the way that this is going to go, and like I said, we're going to have so much fun at the concert.
Absolutely.
We're going to have to get a car to drive us down there.
Right.
Do something fun like that, and maybe get backstage or something. Let's put
I
it to the stars.
love
You talk about
that.
speaking your truth, right? You
Yes.
talk about speak out to the universe. There's certain things that you have to speak your truth. You have to speak with intent. So Stevie Nicks and Billy Joel, we want backstage. Come on, let us in.
Yep, absolutely.
So you never know what the universe will align to get us there, but you have to say it out loud in order for it to be heard.
And then also, I also always tell people to heed the warning. Don't borrow trouble is something that I have always said to my kids, because you don't want to manifest anything bad or negative either. So you don't say,
it works both ways.
My car's going to break down, because then it's going to break down. So always try to be positive, maintain positive, and maintain integrity with what you're doing as well.
Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. So, well, thank you again for joining in to Life Between Coasts. I'm here with Carley, and please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Bye-bye.